This idea that we are losing ourselves when our values are shifting is an illusion. There is no authority that says who you have to be or how you have to be except yourself. You are in full control. The story is that we are a continuous human being, that we to a degree stay the same, and that there's some type of continuity that gives us an illusion of safety. And that demands of us that we maintain this continuity, and if we betray that continuity, that can feel wrong. But the truth is that we cannot anticipate anything. How to stay true to yourself through change. Yes, this is a big one. It's really important. Everybody's changing, our circumstances are changing, and who are we at the end of it? So let's pour yourself a drink. In my case, it's a hot tea, green tea with jasmine. And let's get cozy and talk about it. The first big one is, how do you know what parts of yourself, of your identity and your values are unchangeable and which parts, should evolve? And I think this is an interesting feeling exercise because the answers are on the inside. The parts of you that have been serving you have been there for a reason. And then there are certain parts of you and certain values that are shifting, and that you need maybe also to shift, become somebody else. And you will feel when certain values are kind of in your way. You will notice them. Same for your, identity elements, parts of your story that maybe are not up to date anymore. And you will just feel like it's something that's kind of a burden that you would like to let go of, and maybe you're not sure what will be there instead of that, but you will feel lighter for the willingness of letting them go. Even if you were to evolve into something that is not somewhere you would like to be, you can always go back. There is no authority that says who you have to be or how you have to be except yourself. You are in full control. So you can always adjust and readjust until you're comfortable. It is an iterative process. It never stops. And this idea that anything is set in stone is really just not true. And it's part of our desire as human beings to create something that's resembling stability, but it's all a story. The only true thing is the moment, and in the moment you can always decide to adjust. And then you might ask yourself, hey, I'm in a situation with change. How do I know that this is really an authentic development? Well, you don't really know unless you're trying, or if you have like an inkling before that this is not who you want to be, then you can, course correct before you enter the change phase. However, the best way to figure out if something is for you, and of course, unless it has long-term consequences of trying, the best way to figure it out is to just give it a go. And if you feel that you are conforming, you can always go back and just do something else. Say, this is not for me, this doesn't work, this is not me, I don't like it, and just course correct. What if there's external pressure? Okay, let's say you've changed and people come to you and they say, oh, I don't like the person you've become. You've changed, and they mean it in a way that it's bad. They mean that they don't like the person you've become. Well, do you like the person you've become or you're becoming? That's honestly the most important part. Of course, there are certain relationships that might be important to you and that you would be willing to compromise for. But first and foremost, you're responsible to yourself. So if you want to grow, if you want to change, if there's certain things that you need to do, have the conversations to prepare people and do your thing. Be gentle and understanding and compassionate with other people if they don't know, the person that you're going to be. Maybe they have some anxiety around it, but at the end of the day, everybody's responsible to themselves and for themselves, and our lifetime is a unique experience, and we should make sure that we're true to ourselves. So that is sometimes a negotiation, Sometimes it's a matter of communicating correctly, and sometimes it's also a matter of letting people go or be maybe disappointed for some time and then finding their way back to you. And that also counts for when they are decidedly vigorous about wanting your old self back, but you don't want to be back to your old self. If there is a price that you paid for not changing and then you finally changed, sometimes it can be helpful to explain to other people what this price was that you paid. But if they want the old you back for selfish reasons, it might be that nothing you say really, Sometimes we must be prepared to let people go if they're not willing to follow us where we really feel we're called to go. How do you stay authentic when circumstances force you to adapt? So this is an interesting one. The answer is sometimes you can't. And that is a bit unsatisfying, but what we can do is navigate the circumstances and find openings for our most authentic self in a moment. And, be aware of the fact that we are compromising or that we are conforming for a small period of time or a certain period of time, fully knowing that the moment we don't have to anymore or the moment we can shift responsibilities or requirements, we will go where we want to go. And if you need permission for that, I'm giving you permission. So there might be some internal struggles as well. What happens if you feel like you're betraying your old self? Everybody can only be authentic to themselves in the moment. I've mentioned that before, but you cannot look into the future who you're going to be. Like my younger self, for example, could never imagine the person that I am right now and what I'm doing right now. She knew that I wanted to do something, for other people. She wanted to know that I wanted to live abroad, but we didn't know where that would be. There are some internal struggles as well that we might feel like we need to navigate. So what happens if you feel like you're betraying your old self through the change? This is part of the story. The story is that we are a continuous human being, that we to a degree stay the same, and that there's some type of continuity that gives us an illusion of safety. And that demands of us that we maintain this continuity, and if we betray that continuity, that can feel wrong. But the truth is that we cannot anticipate anything, and the idea of a betrayal is wrong. Evolution means that there's an old part of us that falls away. Very much like when butterflies evolve. They go from being a beautiful little caterpillar into being in a cocoon and essentially turning to goo before they develop wings, and then they come out of the shell, out of the cocoon. And I've had the pleasure of seeing that once. It was absolutely breathtaking, and I realized that there was almost no resemblance of the caterpillar and the butterfly, except for maybe a little bit of the markings and the color scheme, but that was right about it. The shape was different, the food was different, the movement was different, the structure was different, everything from the caterpillar to the butterfly was different, but all stages are necessary to get to, the stage where the butterfly can spread its wings and move away on its own accord freely. And I think that's a very beautiful metaphor to understand that it's not a betrayal, even if it might feel uncomfortable. That's normal, because it really is the death of the old for the rise of the new. So again, maybe there are some things when you embrace growth that you don't want to lose about yourself. I mean, you get to decide that. Just set certain boundaries for yourself. This is a part of me that I don't want to touch. This is unnegotiable. I need this to stay. If you really feel like you're not open to kind of doing a whatever comes type of change, adapting to whatever comes, you are your own, your own boss. You can set certain boundaries for yourself, and maybe even do that in writing, journal about it. you want to change? What are the things that you want to change? What are things that you don't want to change decidedly? And make that your unnegotiables if you really feel that is something that gives you security. Maybe you can write it down. Is it normal if you don't recognize yourself? I would say yes, because what's interesting when we grow a little bit older, and what I didn't know in my 20s, is the more time we acquire, the more perspective we acquire. In my 30s, I've done things and I had, a certain type of hindsight that I didn't have in my 20s because so much time has passed. And I understand now that I'm in my 30s, I have a few more decades to go, hopefully many more decades. But the time frame has changed. So it used to be that I was thinking in a year or 2 or 3, and now I kind of think in 10-year cycles. And that really helps me understand that growth is also sometimes a very slow process, very iterative process. And it is not at all as satisfying and quick as some people make it out to be on social media. Anytime somebody says somebody get very successful, ooh, so successful overnight, and it turns out that there's 10 to 20 years of developing a craft or developing an interest or developing relationships behind that sudden shift. And when you experience any type of acceleration in your path, it's perfectly normal to not recognize the person you were before. And that's okay. The things that are authentic and true remain untouched, in my personal opinion. And if they don't, that's okay too. Some questions also get answers, and then we don't need to carry them with us into the next chapter. Something that I did on a very practical level in order to stay connected to my core was to journal about it. Like, what are the new things, what are the new behaviors that I want to enact while also staying true to certain things that I want to keep? What are, things that I'm open to learning and maybe sacrifice other things in order to have the time and headspace and energy to invite new things into my life. And through writing, it was really helpful to have like a clear structure and maybe even have like a 1-sentence takeaway. For some time, I've vlogged about it. I did morning pages, and I still do when I need clarity. Something very similar, which I call audio pages. I just speak into my phone, my recording device, and I've created an automated transcript where I then get, everything as a text, and it's searchable for me, and I can get little summaries of actionable items, and that's how I navigate that to get structure. Also very good to just draw it as little anchors, as a mind map. That can also be very, very helpful. And what happens if you've changed yourself and you're really happy, but your environment is not happy with it and there's some type of clash or conflict? Well, it might be worth changing the environment. It seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes it's really hard to then, make the change and to really move somewhere else, or to pick a new job, or maybe to, look for a new relationship, or even a new relationship with yourself outside of your behavior, like accepting that you need to set a studio space for yourself, or that you need to have a certain time that is only dedicated to you, because your other environment is in conflict and you need to recharge somewhere. So visualizing these things, I know, I'm the visualizer, really helps me find conflicts, then identify what could steps be to amend this. I have in the past stayed in situations that were really not good for me. For example, my academy education at the Academy of Arts was not good for me. I learned a lot, but there was also a lot of relational tension between students, and it was a pretty stressful environment, and I should have left. And I only knew that in hindsight. And if I had these tools in my hand that I have now, I would have probably left earlier. So make things work for you. It's your time. So, very good. uh, where was I? How do you honor the person that you used to be? Through gratitude. Gratitude. Everything, is stacked on top of each other. We wouldn't be here if we weren't before where we used to be, and before that, where we were before that. So everything is an opportunity to learn and an opportunity for gratitude. And like many people I've seen, things that were not so good, had some, challenging colleagues, challenging relationships. Everybody is, navigating these kind of things, but we also take with us the opportunity to learn from it. And it's interesting that sometimes I'm especially grateful to the challenging people in my life because they gave me a warning that, for example, even people who are very spiritually advanced or who are very knowledgeable might have weak spots, blind spots, are triggerable. That's just one random example. And it gave me the humility to remember, oh yeah, it could happen to anybody at any time, that we get triggered, that we need to take responsibility. Or also, I'm just thankful to my younger self for taking certain risks and for being courageous to move abroad, which I did. I moved from Germany to the United States. I've also spent some time in other countries. And each time it was a challenge because if you don't speak the language or if you don't understand the culture, you need to make a little bit of a leap of faith. And that leap of faith is something that you can be grateful to your younger self for. And sometimes it's also good to look at photographs of your younger self and to just understand that, you made the best decisions at the time when you could make them. And that really relieves us from the pressure of knowing things or doing certain actions before we were ready to do them, because we were just not ready. Most people do the best that is available to them at the time, and that includes our younger selves. And we can be thankful for them doing the best they could at the time. And then the big fear. How do you know that you're not becoming somebody else entirely? Yeah, you don't, okay? This is the big fear. What can we do to navigate that? And the truth is, we can only just iterate in the moment. If we become somebody we don't like, so be it. Then we become somebody else again. As long as we are alive, there is an opportunity to change and to steer it in the direction that we want to be in. So it's exciting to not know, and we can embrace that uncertainty. Yeah, this makes me want to take a risk. Interesting. So this was my little tea chat about how to stay true to yourself through change. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave me some thoughts. What do you do to stay true to yourself when you're changing? How do you anchor yourself, ground yourself, make your own path, your own story visible? What are your go-tos? And also let me know what I could put on my empty wall. I moved and this wall is naked. It is white. So any tips would also be super welcome. So maybe I can see you next time in front of a really interesting background that you suggested.